Good morning, and welcome everyone to Spirit Matters, your daily Bhakti Center podcast, where we talk about spiritual subject matters and bring them into the lens of our daily lives. And we try to take these really sometimes high concepts and find the practical message that they're trying to send us. And we are joined here by our live studio audience representing all over the world: Brazil, Delray, Florida, the Philippines, the west coast of the United States. And I am accompanied here by Achyuta Gopi, my co-host extraordinaire. Our tri-host is still missing in action. Maybe he will be back tomorrow. I think he will be back tomorrow. We will find out. We'll see. So yesterday we opened the can of worms, as they say, in this really interesting topic that people seem to really like. And we opened it with a question in terms of like, yeah, when you're a devotee or when you're someone who's practicing Krishna bhakti, what is my relationship then with people that are not devotees or people who are not practicing Krishna bhakti? And I think that can be also zoomed out. Like when I'm someone who is just getting really deep into my spirituality or deep into my journey of discovering the self, right? Like what happens then with the people that aren't deep on that journey of discovering the self? And we got into it a lot yesterday, but it seemed like such a good topic and people were really vibing with it. So we thought we would continue the topic today because it's there's a lot to be unpacked. How are you feeling this morning, Achyuta? I forgot to ask you that.
I no, I'm good. What I was just listening to him like you're making it sound so alluring. I like it, you know? I like this. This is good. But yeah, exactly that. We are talking about, this devotees versus non-devotees association, all of the above. And what this really means. And you can hear some really, really harsh views. You could have somebody who is pretty much perfect in every way, and if they are not a like practicing Krishna bhakta, fully like inculcated, committed to the path, people will say things like, oh, but but they're not a devotee, you should just drop them. And I'm like, wait, what? That's where I'm like, wait, whoa, wait, why are we throwing out this person?
Mm,
And for me, I think I'm going into today with like so many of the people that we know and love and take spiritual inspiration from were at one time non-devotees.
mm,
I think it's really important for us to remember that, because sometimes we can get caught up in but if you are a practicing bhakti yogi and you have then you have all the best qualities, and you hear it, right? If you are a devotee, you have all of the best qualities. And if you are not, you could have all the best qualities, but they don't matter, because the fact that you are not practicing spiritually and you have not spiritually committed cancels out all of those good qualities. And I just want us to be careful with that.
mm. That's such a nice way to open it, Achyuta, because I'm just remembering, I don't remember when this was, but I know we've talked about these subjects before a lot. I remember we talked about like devotees, the fact that devotees are people too. And that means that they have a side of them where they will do things that maybe are not necessarily like in line with what it quote unquote means to be a devotee. And sometimes you'll meet people who are not devotees. I'm doing the air quote marks, not devotees. And they're like beautiful, amazing, like have all these amazing qualities, etc. And we've talked about this so many times of the form versus the substance, right? Or the appearance of something versus like what's actually happening in someone's heart. And I think that when we get caught on like appearances and performances, like performativeness, we get into a really like what's the word I'm looking for? It gets really shallow, for lack of a better word, you know?
Mm.
And that's with everything in life, whether it's my identity as a devotee or a non-devotee or any other. I know we were like delving into all the other identities yesterday, but it's like I think a lot about this, you know, with race. I think a lot about it with sexuality and stuff like that. It's like, and even gender, it's like I'm my performance as a man, you know, or like my performance as this race or my performance as that. And I remember like when I was in my, something that I discovered really soon is that apparently I am racially ambiguous to a lot of people. Like people don't know what I am.
It's true, you are. You are pretty racially ambiguous.
And I found it so interesting that different people will tell me that I'm a different race according to them. Like not according to me, according to like them and who they are and their upbringing and what part of the world they're in and all of this stuff. And I always thought that that was super interesting because I'm like, wow, so it's really not about like me or what race I actually am.
Yeah.
It's about you and how you're viewing me or how I'm performing,
Yeah.
quote unquote, race. And I thought that that was always so interesting because when I like Latin, Hispanic it up and I put my hat on and I got my nice little shape up and I'm like, whatever. And I got my little swagger on. People are like, oh yeah, I get it now. You know, I see it. And I'm just like, okay. But like, I can speak fluent Spanish. I'm actually Ecuadorian, you know? And I've had people tell me, and I don't know if you've ever gotten this, Achuta, and this is like the worst thing in the world, in my opinion. But I've had people tell me, like, you're so like you don't seem Latin because
You're so well spoken
you're
and
so well spoken, you're so articulate, you're so well
so
educated.
articulate. My goodness.
Like,
Yeah.
where's your accent? You know, I'm like, well, I don't have an accent because when I speak in Spanish, then I just speak in Spanish. And when I speak in English, I just speak in English, you know? And they're like, something's off here. You know, I'm like, okay.
Oh. Yeah, the funny thing is the like where's your accent? And I was like, well, when I got up this morning, I decided to not go and then like I decided to leave that at home. And then I came outside and then now here I am. Like what how what yeah. It gets so interesting and the kicker is that none of it has anything to do with you. It's not something, none of it has anything to I've had people and they're like, "Are you from Uganda?" And I'm like, "Did you just pick a random country?" Because no, I'm not. I'm from America. And they're like, "But I feel like you're from Uganda." And I was like, "But what makes you feel that?" Because I'm not. And what does that look like? Because that's different. And then I've had people ask me, I've literally been in India and somebody's come up to me like, "What part of Bengal are you from?" I'm like, "West." Because there's no arguing there anymore. And so the formulation of the world according to people's minds,
Mm,
and then they're just trying to fit you in it, and somehow or other you're kind of taught to just be polite about it
mm,
instead of actually saying, that's really uncomfortable
mm,
and kind of inappropriate.
mm,
But we are taught it's like, this has nothing to do with you, and then you can't even make it about you. Like, allow them to have their misconceptions.
mm,
But I mean, it is the same thing with devotees and non-devotees. And we start to put people on a pedestal, especially as devotees, simply based on the performative aspect of spirituality. Well, they've been around for this many years, they must know something. And I'm like, well, what makes you feel that way?
mm,
Did you test it? Did you ask them? Have they read? Did you talk to them about it? Because if you talk to them for 5 minutes, you'll find out. And I know I've said it here, like I've had conversations and I have actually said to people, I don't want to have this conversation anymore. It's making me uncomfortable.
mm,
I'm not going to do this anymore. And I've walked away and then people are like, but that's a Prabhupada disciple. And I was like, I didn't say anything wrong. I said it was making me uncomfortable.
mm,
I should be able to say that something's making me uncomfortable.
mm,
And so, we can look at that performative aspect of things and really remember that just as people are putting us in boxes, we're also putting people in boxes and sometimes to our own detriment.
mm.
And so we shouldn't be so eager to throw out people who have not completely committed to this path of bhakti. And we should also not be so eager to put anybody on a pedestal who has simply been around for a long time.
Mm.
Sometimes we've got to look at the essence of what they're getting
Mm.
and then fit them into those slots.
Mm.
Still with room to change, like always subject to change.
Mm. I always think about this in terms of like the fact that everyone has a story and that everyone is just going through it and everyone is suffering just like we're suffering. Everyone is, you know, trying to make it through this crazy world just like we're trying to make it through this crazy world. And I really like, the reason I'm thinking about that is because I really like that you mentioned like, yeah, people put people in boxes and so do we. You know, like we're not like everyone here in the Spirit Matters podcast and you know, we're just like absolved from all of this stuff. You know, we're just talking about it, but we don't participate. It's like, no, you know, we got to be real with ourselves. Like
Yeah.
we also do this, you know. And I think that what's really good and what's really interesting though is that like we're at least aware that we do this, you know, or at least we're practicing some awareness around it. It's like, oh, this is like, this might be to my detriment, you know, or the other person's detriment. Like this might not be so useful or sustainable or whatever, you know, because I think that when it comes to this performative aspect, I love that you brought this up, Achita, about like, yeah, you meet people in the movement who've been in it for years and you expect them to know something because there's this like cognitive like thing of just like, oh yeah, you've been in, you must know, right? I remember for me a very attractive quality in a person in a devotee is when they know things.
Yeah.
It's just very attractive in general. It's like, wow,
It is.
you like know about Krishna and you like know about bhakti and you know about like the tattva, right? This word
Yeah.
truth or the siddhantas, the conclusions of bhakti. Like, you know, our dear friend Jai Jagannath, he's one of my very best friends, and he is so incredibly attractive in this sense. Like, so many people are attracted to him because he knows, like, he can quote like anything. Like, it's just like crazy. It's like, whoa, like, and not just quote, like, no, like he knows. And it's like, whoa, okay, this is amazing. And I remember, I don't know if I should share this because Braj is on the call, but I've told him this before. He knows this. He
And
knows
it's fine. This is good tea.
he knows this. He knows this. But before Braj, I was there was this devotee, and it's so interesting because I was seeing this devotee and it was like set up in all the pucka and all the right ways. Like he was introduced and the other devotees in London, they all knew him and everything was like, you know, very like this. And I remember it was very short-lived, but I remember like he grew up in the movement. He was a devotee.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Like, you know.
Brett is just acting. He knows this. I've told him this story many times. And I asked him, like, I would ask him questions about like Bhagavad Gita, or I would ask him questions about like just like things. He just like wouldn't know. I was like, wait, what? I was like, have you read this before? He's like, actually, no, this is my first time reading the Bhagavad Gita. I'm like, what? I was like, you've been in this movement for like your entire life, and this is your first time reading the entire Bhagavad Gita all the way through. And I was like, oh my God, Bridge, I hope he doesn't hear Spirit Matters. I
I
doubt
hope he does. And pick up a book, bro.
pick up a book. And the way the place I'm going to this is that when I met Brudge, you know, Brudge lived in Vrindavan for like 3.5 years as a brahmachari and was like very simple and just very learned. And he's someone that I think knows more than me, more than a lot of people. And that was like immediately attractive, like not even on a romantic level. I was just like, oh, like, you know what you're talking about. You've dedicated your life to this, and it's not just performative, right? And that's what I'm trying to get at. It's like you've dedicated your life to this. You're saying that you love Krishna, but you actually know who Krishna is, and you actually know what Krishna did, and you actually know what our acharyas and the teachers in our lineage are saying about Krishna. And I was like, that for me was like, Whoa. And actually, I remember when Brett and I first met, um, I don't know why I'm spilling all the tea, but I'm feeling it in this.
Oh no, I'm loving this so much.
He's from a
It's
different
such a joy.
he's from a different sangha. It's called Gaudiya Math, but it's all the same thing.
I mean, technically, we're in the same house. It's
Well,
just
yeah, we're in the same house.
same umbrella term, like just different little raindrops.
And apparently, I don't know if you know this, Achuta, but apparently they have this conception of ISKCON devotees that we might not know our stuff.
Oh yeah. I've been cornered. I've
Yeah.
been cornered since the time I was 10. I've actually been cornered and had to have these like debates, philosophical debates since 10 years old.
So basically, when we first met, Brooke was kind of like testing me. He was just like,
Ah!
he
They
was
always do. Why?
like,
I'm
he was
testing.
like, so what do you think about this? I was like, well, this and this and this. And he's like, and do you know this? I was like, yeah, I know that. He's like, okay, well, what about this like super, polarizing concept in blah, blah, blah. I was just like, yeah, I know about that. He's like, okay, good. I'm glad you know. He's like, we can continue. I was like, good. Okay, enough tea. But the the place I'm going to with this is that, as people who are practicing spiritualists, like we should know our Jay Jagannath likes to say this, we should know our chit. Chit means spiritual knowledge. We should know our chit, we should know what we're talking about. And I think with new age spirituality, why it gets such a bad rap sometimes is because when everything means everything, then nothing means nothing, if that
Yeah,
makes
nothing
sense,
means
right?
anything.
Not, yeah. If everything means everything, if it's like the lamp is love and so is the TV and it's all God and so are we, it's like then nothing means nothing. And so it's like we really want to understand, like, well, and that's why bhakti is so special. It's like there's thousands and thousands and eternities of years where stuff is coming from, and it's like our life's goal is to try and understand this as best as we can. And so yeah, it's like there's a depth to it, and that's what we mean by substance. There's like a depth to it, as opposed to like this is what it looks like, or I'm performing it, or I put on a dhoti and a sari and all of a sudden I'm spiritual. It's like not so much.
Yeah. Was it Srila Prabhupada would often say, a crisp dhoti, no, a white dhoti and crisp tilak does not a devotee make.
Mm,
And the point was just that. And I was just looking at a quote that I've seen thousands of times before, but it popped up yesterday on social media. And Srila Prabhupada is saying, I'm writing all these books. You're distributing them. You're going out for selling all these things. But if somebody were to ask you what's in them, could you even tell them? No, I don't read them. I just sell them. He's like, what kind of movement is this? He's like, I'm not writing these just for you to distribute them. You should read them also. He put in so much hard work over the course of 11 years, 12 years. Like that is such hard work.
mm,
That first volume of Srimad Bhagavatam, he spent typing himself, and he didn't know how to type, just one finger, just hunting and pecking with one finger for the entirety of that one volume, which is so incredible. It's such a way to honor our
mm,
spiritual preceptors, to really dive in, read their works, listen to their emotional ecstasies. And there's such a big thing, about ecstasy, spiritual ecstasy, transcendental ecstasy. And you hear so much about it in bhakti yoga. And sometimes you might think, like, what does that look like modern day?
mm,
And they would say, Srila Prabhupada would say that those purports were his devotional ecstasies. So for our spiritual teachers and acharyas and preceptors, these are their most ecstatic moments, and they're revealing them. They're not just, people usually keep those things to themselves. It's a very private, intimate thing. Here they're giving it with an open heart. It is so important and imperative to our spiritual well-being and the health of our spiritual lives to read them, imbibe them,
mm,
catch that mood, figure out who we'd like to be as spiritualists, what path we're on, what we would like to emulate. Because that's the other thing that happens with association. You begin to take on some of the qualities and emulate the people that you're around. Try as you might, it just happens. So the more that we associate with these spiritually minded teachers, masters, the more that we begin to emulate their qualities, hopefully in the best way. There is there's a well-known kirtan leader named Ayendra,
Mm.
passed away some years ago, about 11 and a half years ago now. And a lot of people who would even listen to his kirtans or were around him, they would start to kind of like emulate the things that he said. And just after he passed, there was a lot of, well, Ayendra said, floating around. And people would come to me and they'd say, well, Ayendra said so and so. And I would say, that's cool. How many rounds did you chant today?
Mm.
And they were like, oh, well, like 16, just usual japa. And I was like, cool. Come back when you've chanted about like 90 to 100.
Mm.
And they're like, what? And I was like, Ayendra was chanting like 2 lakh rounds, which is somewhere, it's some astronomical number. Like 300,000 names is 192 rounds. So give or take 64 away from that. And then I was like, yeah, come back when you've chanted that many.
Mm.
And they were always kind of like, what are you talking about? I was like, well, he was chanting that many. And that's why he has the qualifications, or like, for ISKCON speak. That's why he has the adhikar to be able to say these things.
Mm.
I do not.
Mm.
We don't. So sometimes when we're so quick to throw out the things, I'm always also wondering, but did I spend my time sleeping under a tree
Mm.
to be able to say? And usually I do that with the harsh things. With the sweet things, I feel like it's so much more palatable. Sometimes with the harsh truths, we need to have a deeper relationship with each other and with Krishna.
Mm.
We didn't put in the work to jump to that level yet. And the only reason I say this is because I was thinking about Maharaj saying that he tortured his parents with his fanaticism. We can become fanatics, even down to, my own spiritual master is saying he tortured his parents with his Krishna consciousness. Sometimes we can be torturing the people around us. And sometimes we can cut off Krishna's mercy for those people around us. And why? Sometimes they haven't spiritually committed, and that has to be okay for them.
Mm.
We can't sit there and be like, are you ISKCON? Like, there was a point, and we would take out articles. Not are you in ISKCON, not are you a part, are you ISKCON? Are you Gaudiya Math? And I was like, I'm not either, because I'm a human. I'm a spirit soul. I am part of an organization of Krishna consciousness, but no, I am not all of ISKCON, thank you.
Mm.
Or you start going by people's gurus. Like, are you a Jayapataka Maharaj disciple? Well, then, I don't know. Like, you start to get these
Mm.
categories based on even who somebody's spiritual master is. And I feel like we've got to keep remembering that all devotees are people.
Mm. Mm.
All non-devotees are people too. But Krishna as a Paramatma is in every single heart. So who am I to say who is really a non-devotee or not?
Mm. Mm.
Because if Srila Prabhupada had thought like that, maybe we wouldn't have our spiritual master. If Srila Prabhupada had thought the West is just filled with non-devotees, we wouldn't be here. And in fact, Srila Prabhupada was thinking actively, the West is filled with non-devotees.
Mm.
So even more reason. This is what his spiritual master wanted. So with excitement, yes, the West is filled with non-devotees.
Mm.
And in watching the Hare Krishna movie, I heard something from Srila Prabhupada that I had never heard before. He said he got depressed.
Mm.
He said, I became so depressed. He said he would go back to the docking yard where the original Jaladuta had dropped him off and asked several times, when is the next ship back to Calcutta?
Mm.
And they told him, and he just didn't get on. But he asked. And for the first time, I really thought about how precarious our situation was. And I really was like, we almost didn't make it. But that feeling of feeling dejected over an insurmountable task is natural.
Mhm,
Even great souls can feel that I don't know if I'm big enough for this.
mm,
And then that's how we know that it's empowered
mm,
because he did it anyway.
mm,
So I'm always so enlivened and inspired by how Srila Prabhupada would assess different people or gauge them, or put them into boxes. And those boxes were always based on, okay, this person would like to serve. Let me find a service for them.
mhm, mhm. Yeah, it's really interesting because Martha at the bottom said the need of identity becomes tricky. And I think it is interesting because it is tricky in a sense because I love the way that you're bringing it up in terms of Srila Prabhupada, where it's like you see someone, you see their natural propensities,
Yeah.
and it's like, okay, we're going to put you here, you know? So it's not like identity is a bad thing necessarily or what our natural propensities are, and where that guides us. That's not necessarily a bad thing. I think maybe what we're talking more about is once we start to judge people based on identity instead of um, instead of seeing people's natural proclivities or natural inclinations. And I love how you mentioned, yeah, Srila Prabhupada's mood was more like, wow, there's a whole country full of people who've never heard of Krishna. So I'm going to go there and I am going to share who Krishna is. Like it's this enthusiasm and this exuberance. And I think that that's so needed and so necessary, because I think that in spiritual communities, a lot of spiritual communities, and I think people get really burnt out by this, of like how you mentioned, you is come, you
Right.
Kodima, you this, you that. It's like we bring that judging of identity into our spirituality, and that's like the opposite of what we're supposed to be doing. And it's like we see someone, it's like, oh, your dhoti, your spiritual clothes is wrinkled, that means you must not be serious. It's like we just use the mind like this. And I really love what Martha wrote above. We didn't see that, but she wrote, the beauty of bhakti is that it is all inclusive, inviting people from all kinds of paths, and it is so sweet to know that. We should follow that example and accept and welcome and understand that we might look different or sound different, but we are all the same to Krishna. And it's like that's it, like that's it. Like Martha summed it up so perfectly. And it's just like, I think when we say that, when we say like bhakti is non-sectarian, or when we say like, bhakti welcomes everyone, it's like one thing is saying it and then the other thing is like living it. And I think that that's why and I've mentioned this many times before, that's why places like the Bhakti Center I think are so important, because it's like you go to a Thursday night kirtan, everyone is a different race,
It
everyone's
is
different
it
walk of
is
life.
legit UN. It is the
It's
United
the legit United Nations. And it's like crazy. It's like, whoa, okay, this is amazing. And this is what we need. And so many devotees will come and they'll visit. They'll visit New York and they'll say afterwards to us, like, this is like special. Like, this is something different.
It's not like that everywhere. Just gonna
Oh,
warn you guys. Bhakti Devi, the actual personality named Bhakti, right? Who personifies all of this Krishna consciousness in the widest sense of the word. She is all inclusive. Wonderful. Sometimes the organization might get a little tricky, but she still loves you. And so does Krishna. And so does Srila Prabhupada.
mm, yes. And I think that, and maybe we can talk, I don't know if, because I was feeling like maybe we should talk about Srila Prabhupada tomorrow or something like this, because
We
I
should.
think something really interesting that sometimes people get mixed up, and I'll end with this because I know we're at time, is that my faith and devotion to Krishna and what's being said in Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, is sometimes different to the air quotes organization. And my faith to Krishna might be different than my faith to the organization. and the issues in the organization might be different to what's being said in the actual philosophy. And I think sometimes people tend to equate those two things, and it gets tricky, for lack of a better word. But I'm not going to open that can of worms just yet. Maybe we can dive into that tomorrow. We are all fresh out of time, so we're going to hand it over to Kimberly for our takeaways. And if anyone has any other takeaways, please put them in the chat.
Thank you. So today we're taking away that everyone has a story, and we shouldn't be so eager to throw people out or put them on a pedestal. We should know our chit and know and live what we're talking about. And lastly, devotees and non-devotees are all people who have Krishna in their heart.
Oh, that's so sweet. I love that. I love Kimberly's like astute ability to be able to just like shoop.
Right? Yeah.
Thank you so much, Kimberly. Achita, you have any takeaways?
Feel like, as the homies say, don't just talk about it, be about it.
That's right.
Feel like I want to be about it. I don't want to get to a place where people are saying, oh my God, you say you love Govinda so much, so what's he like? And I'm like, I don't know. He just sounds great to me.
He's dark.
Yeah. I wanna really be able to sound like I'm obsessed with my bestie.
Mm, I love that. I love that. Yeah, be about it. That's a good one. All right. Thank you all so much for your beautiful presence, Martha and Kimberly and Leishwari, Sydney, Brudge. Sorry for spilling all our tea.
I love
Kristen, Raja, Irenka, Rini, and Anna, thank you all so much for listening. And we will be back tomorrow. Maybe our tri-host will be back. We will see. We will see. Thank you all so much. Have a beautiful rest of your day. Bye, everyone.